We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members first. To my left is Stuart McPherson. To my far left, Maurice Tariguin. Today the assessor will be Rob Lucky, and the administrative assistant today is Katie Sutherland. I'm Marcel Larondo. I'll be chairing. We'll be hearing applications for revision of assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit the discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed by each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions and the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And I'd ask you to please put your phones on silent. And if you could swear them in, please. Thank you, Katie.
State your name.
Robert L. Lucky.
You swear that the matter you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name.
Sid Story.
You swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Lucky, when you are ready, we'll deal with 333 Ward Avenue.
Roll number 0802-1144100, 333 Ward, file number 19-4641. We have excuse me, 2006 three-story apartment building with 103 suites. On page 3, we've done we have model parameters. There's 101 2-bedrooms, 2 3-bedrooms. Our average monthly rent, and when I say rent, that includes parking, laundry, any kind of income, divided by the number of suites. And comparing our model parameters to the actuals, our income is lower, our expense is different, but the NOI is very close. It's within about $1,000. And last go around in 18, the assessment of $18,228,000 was confirmed. No municipal board appeal. There was a share sale of the property, and on page 5.8 of our brief, 5A, sorry, it shows 333 Ward, sale, 15th of January 16 for $18 million.
Which page is that?
That's 5A.
5A, okay.
These are, like, we have the, on 5 we have our model, cap rate parameters, and 5A we've included some actual cap rate sales. And Ward happens to be one. And based on the appraisal that we have, we used a 5% cap rate, and the income and expenses that we looked at and Altus looked at, the 5% cap rate seems right on. And okay, yeah, I have the order in here that assessment was converted last go around, so that's all I have.
Sid, any questions?
Yes, the second last thing you said, did you indicate that, you were just talking about page 5, and you said, did you say Altus had agreed to 5%? Did I hear you wrong? I'm
I
sorry.
think it's 5 or 5.1.
But you say Altus?
Altus cap rate study, yeah.
And where's that?
It's not in here.
Oh, okay. Because I recall it was 12%, but it was, okay.
Pardon me?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
It's not in there. So why didn't you use what was in there? If you go to page 5 of your brief, that's the cap rate study. And if you look at Collier's Q1, it's 5 to 6% for this low rise type of low rise. Correct? 5 to 6%? On page 5.
Page 5,
Yeah. Collier's.
Colliers is 5 to 6%,
Yeah.
right?
And if you go to page 5A of your brief, this is the four properties. These are to test the cap rate or to support cap rate evidence. I take it from the.
These are some examples of cap rate sales that we looked at.
And you're aware that the first three had potential renovation opportunities with them? Roche, Maxwell, and Tellman.
I mean, all the properties have renovation potential.
And you made reference to Ward and their appraisal.
Right.
Have you seen the appraisal?
I have, yeah.
And there was much conversation last year about cap rate and Ward, where we took the position that the actual cap rate based on the appraisal was 5.23%. You recall that from last year, the last cycle?
You're at 5 point what?
5.23.
2, 3, okay.
Have you inspected the property?
No, I've only driven by it, I haven't been in it.
Okay. And you, by driving by, you saw that there's the main building and then the parking is sheltered, and it's a separate shelter, off, not attached to the building.
I can't remember,
No.
to tell you the truth.
And it has all 2-bedroom apartments. Is that a positive or a negative in your experience?
Oh, it seems to be a positive trend. But a lot of the new buildings are all 2 bedrooms.
Strictly to no ones or bachelors or anything of that nature?
Some new construction has ones, but a lot of the apartments are 2.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I think we're fine.
Monsieur Tallien, any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. McPherson, any questions?
A couple of quick ones.
Do you have a recent inspection report on this property at all? So the assumption is that it's in average condition?
It's a fairly newer building. We've inspected it. I don't have the reports.
Okay, but it is a model generated value?
I think because it's so close to the actuals that most likely somebody reviewed it. When we do our percent change reports, we review, I mean, our model's good, don't get me wrong, but it's within $1,000 or just over $1,000. It could have generated that, but there's also a better chance that somebody reviewed it.
And 2.6 vacancy, that's market vacancy? Do you-
That's right.
Do you know how the actual vacancy is on this property?
I don't know what,
I don't think they reported it.
I don't, yeah, typically the property managers don't track or don't report vacancies. They know what the income is, but it's somewhat cumbersome to calculate actual vacancy, looking at every rent roll every month. Typically vacancies either ballpark, because all the rents are all different suites have different rents. Ours is arrived by CMHC reports and returns.
Okay, and then finally, the 5A, you've got 4 comparable cap rates that were developed using stabilized owner reported income and expense statement.
Right.
Did you look and see what the model generated cap rates are for these properties? The subject is 5%.
The subject's 5.
5%.
We're at
I
5.
just wondered if you looked at the other ones at all.
Offhand, no.
That's my question, thank you.
You said based on the appraisal that we have. Which appraisal is this?
Of the subject, done for the purchaser, or for the vendor, I'm not sure.
No, but whose appraisal is it?
It was an independent AECI.
Do you have a copy of it, or?
We have a copy, I didn't bring it here.
I have it in our evidence.
Oh, you have that in your evidence?
Yeah.
Okay. Cap rates. When you're calculating it, you take the value of the property and you do what?
Sorry?
When you're calculating your cap rate on an individual property off of an appraisal,
Well, we stabilized the income and expenses
yeah?
and get the NOI, divide that into the sale price, get the cap rate.
Into the sale price. And the sale price, would that be referenced basically by the estimated market value then? The estimated market value that you have should be what the sale price would be, or close to it, shouldn't it? In this year that you're dealing with? Like you're putting a value at 19,630,000.
Right.
So if you did the calculation using your numbers, what would that cap rate come out to? Okay. Sit on with your report.
I have a couple of quick follow-up questions, if I may.
Let's make them quick.
Okay. Mr. Leff, you go to page, bringing up the number here. In your brief, it's the third page from the end, and it's the residential income statement for subject property. You got that? It's not number, it says 1 of 2 on the bottom there. See that? You find that page? It's on your, it's in,
Oh, sorry, you know,
It's in your-
I might have, you
it's
know,
your brief, it's 3 from the back. Gentlemen, it's
I
just-
have more pages on mine, sorry.
You have more pages?
Yeah. Okay, I got you now.
Okay. Everybody
Yeah,
got it?
I added another year,
Mr. Chair? Yeah. That's the third from the end, from the assessor's brief.
Third from the end.
Yeah.
Residential income statement.
Residential income statement. And the assessors asked a question, do you know what the actual vacancy, and he said, no, he didn't know. It's in the financial, it's in his brief, 31,214. And how does that relate to the 2.6 that's allowed? It's actually less, it's 1.9%.
Okay.
Okay, so you knew. And then the other thing that came up was an error, and fairly significant error. You indicated that the appraisal was for the purchase, for the purpose of a purchase?
I don't know offhand what the purpose would be. I said either vendor or purchaser.
You can talk about why it was there in your presentation,
Okay.
Chief.
Okay, I'm ready.
Good. Walk and load.
As it passes out of the way, should I pass it to the bottom line, Chief?
Might as well.
Salt cap right now. I just want to make sure that you folks have, this appraisal should be common for all of the, in the brief.
Okay. So you will mine in every file?
No, we gave this to the board.
We don't have it.
This is the appraisal.
You didn't give it to me.
Nope. We didn't get it.
Got
Okay, I have excerpts of it.
thing that's under the, here, you got this, the non-constable test stuff, that's
Okay,
it.
it's quite heavy. This is- Okay, so we have excerpts. Thank you. If you go to our brief, this is a, front page of the brief is a photograph of the subject property. As Mr. Lucky says, built in 2006. It's unique in terms of they're all two-bedroom apartments.
Sorry, are we on your brief?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
After we go this.
Would you prefer I do the rebuttal? I'll just walk through this.
Walk through it and then go to the rebuttal.
Okay. If we go to page 3 of our brief, our whole issue today is the capitalization rate is 6, we suggest it should be 6%. This is a wood frame building, it's got crawl space, no basement. It has an outbuilding that has some requirements of maintenance, additional requirements of maintenance. We look at the city model, and we're almost bang on, as Mr. Lucky said, with the revenue side of it. The city's at 2.6, we're at 2.6 as well. The actual is 1.9. The expense ratio is 38.96, and we've accepted that. And our issue is the assessor's at a 5% capitalization rate based on what I think was an error that happened a couple of years ago when the city, through one of the agencies, ended up with the appraisal. And they interpreted the appraisal to be a 5% cap rate. They didn't realize that it was a higher cap rate until they saw the appraisal. So I think 6% is reasonable, supported by the third-party opinions. If you flip through, you'll see on page 6, you'll see some of the overview of the property. Page 7 is another view. Page 8 is the income statement from the property. If you were to take the NOI, which is on page 9, if you just took the NOI, which is 982,936, at 5.5%, the assessment would be 17,871,000 if you used actuals as opposed to modeling. There's the trends we mentioned before. The important one, I think, is page 12. If we just take a minute. And I've got this with more backup to it in my rebuttal brief, but page 60 is a page out of this appraisal. And it shows that the purchase price was $18,820,000. And they in fact bought it, Monwest bought it for that amount. And then I'd like to just go to this rebuttal brief if we could, and it gives you a little bit of an explanation on each. So first on cap rate rebuttal, the city introduced 3 new properties, and I think this board's probably heard it. A lot of people have heard these properties, and they're being reviewed or discounted, I believe, to some degree because they're renovation opportunities, and there's a decision from the municipal board that addresses that. So 191 Roche, we believe that it was acquired with an intent to renovate. The condition that acquisition was fair and rents appear to reflect that condition. Talbot, same thing, was purchased with some significant renovation contemplated. Maxwell is our position that Maxwell was purchased with significant renovations of $413,000 contemplated with the intent to increase the rents over the next 3 years. And then we've attached municipal board order A18431 that suggests we should not consider a cap rate derived on the sale where there's an immediate intent or an imminent intent to renovate. I think the board is all aware of this. If you buy a property and you can convince the rentalsman that you're going to do a much needed renovation, they will waive rent control for a period of time. So developers, investors are sometimes buying these buildings that have some requirement for work. They qualify and they do the work, they buy it, qualify, do the work themselves in some cases, and they get the benefit of the additional rent after renovation. And these 3 properties are clearly defined as that. I'm just going to flip the page and I'll come back. If you go to page 4, that's that municipal order. If you go to page 3 of the order, page 6 of our rebuttal brief, I underlined Rob Lucky, presented his qualifications. And this is Mr. DuPont and Mr. Lucky. And if you go to page 4 of the decision, you'll see this is talked about when there's another revenue source which is potential to improve the property, that the cap rate should not be used as typical cap rate. And that's that board order on this. If you go to page 11, down in the very last box C at the bottom, you'll see site upgrades, $100,000. There's a, page 11, there's an email from Asteroid Management.
So that was page 11 you referred to.
Yeah, so page 14, sorry. Here, 11,
Yours good.
hang on, 11 was the, yeah, 11 was what you see, Mr. McPherson, at the bottom box. The suite upgrades, 100,000.
Right.
And then this is, then we're flipping to page 14, it's double, page 14, and this is an email to Mr. DuPont from Asteroid Management and copy to Ms. Becker. And the underline, his intent was to renovate through, and we're not involved in the renovation. That's that's property manager speaking. And then we move on further, and this this is 394 Talbot's on page 16 of the rebuttal brief. And you'll see that it says totally renovated, including new kitchens and bathrooms, new windows and
Sorry,
blinds.
what page is this?
Page 16.
16.
Yeah, got it?
Okay.
You good? Okay. And then, if you look at the next page, 17, that's Ackman Management sending again a letter to Mr. Dupont, saying that the property was purchased with the intent to renovate. The kitchen and bathrooms were renovated for $413,000, so that was a legitimate renovation that's already completed. This was reflected in the 218 questionnaire, and you have the 218 questionnaire right behind. And if you go to page 19, again, this is Maxwell Place. Page 19, you'll see at the bottom it showed 412, and they indicated when they bought it, they reported that they anticipated doing renovation of 413,000, and they did 412. And then you get into the infamous appraisal on Ward. And it starts out, if you go to page 21, you'll see that this is written to FWS Group of Companies, and in accordance to, nowhere in here we see Marwest Management, who are the ultimate purchasers of the property. This appraisal was not done for them. The purpose of the appraisal, as instructed, is to estimate the market value of the subject property for compliance with shareholders' agreement requirements. We believe there's some dispute between the shareholders. The effective date is January 20th, 2015. And this is an appraisal at $18,820,000. And I'll give you some dates that make some sense. On or about February 15th, this is on page 2 of our rebuttal brief. On or about February 15th of 2015, Mr. Don White of Colliers, commercial agent, presented Marwest Management with an opportunity to purchase 333 Ward for $18,820,000, based on an appraisal dated January 20th, 2015. The appraisal wasn't done.
Sorry, what page is this?
Oh, page 2 of the rebuttal brief. The notes on the 4 columns.
Second page of the rebuttal.
Okay.
It's the bottom of it.
Okay.
Okay, got it? So, on or about February 15th, the appraisal was done. January 20th of 2015, an appraisal was done. In February, it was suggested to people of Marwest that this property might be available for sale. The agent did provide Marwest with a copy of the appraisal. It's here, I'll give it to you. Evidence if you like. The appraisal produced an NOI of $940,804, which you can see on that page, shows us page 60. It's 22 of the rebuttal brief and page 60 of the appraisal. And you can see the NOI is $940,864. They made reference in here with consideration, which is the top paragraph just above the box, with the consideration given to the characteristics of the subject property, including the location, age, condition, unit mix, quality, and projected income, as well as a declining trend in capitalization rates. Remember, this 215. They used a figure, says a figure 5% has been selected as an appropriate capitalization rate for the subject property. And so that appraisal using 5% resulted in $18,820,000. But nobody bought it for $18,820,000. Marwest Management indicated to Mr. White, the agent, that Marwest were not interested after they did a very brief due diligence on this transaction. A year later, Colliers approached them again to indicate that the vendors may be prepared to accept a reduced offer from the suggested 18 million. Mar West looked at it two ways. Number one is they offered 18 million and it was accepted. And if you take the 18 million against the NOI of 94804 is 5.23%, not 5%. They report in their due diligence, they report that they bought it with a 5.5 cap rate. The reason they report that is they made an adjustment to NOI of $40,000. And that was because there's what they thought there was some operational efficiencies. The property, if you look at page 22 of the rebuttal brief, 60 of the appraisal. They have a caretaker in here at $46,000, plus they lose a suite, because they're all they're all two-bedroom suites, so you can't give the caretaker a small suite.
Sorry,
And then-
which page?
60 of the appraisal, 22 of the rebuttal brief.
Okay.
I just want to show you, if you look, there's a cost for care, this is just, I don't have a lot to support it with me other than to tell you about it. The caretaker is 46, and then the property management is 48. So they had just done a transaction that we're going to be looking at this afternoon, or later today, and that's Kearney and Belleville, where they bought 2 apartment blocks close to one another, and they have 1 caretaker, and they thought they might have an operational efficiency in here. So after their due diligence, they concluded they were buying it for 18 million at 5.5%, but of course for that is the recovery of some operational efficiencies. But straight up, based on 18 million, not 18,820, they paid 18 million. That's in your brief, in the assessor's brief. That would be 5.23%. So I'd like the board to consider that. But it's very important, I think, to realize this was not prepared for a purchase. It was prepared for a dispute between shareholders, and it resurfaced. They turned it down initially and then came back. If you go to the next pages, you'll see that these are hardly comparable or hardly representative, in my opinion, of the city of Winnipeg, all classes of apartments. When you look at page 23 of the brief, that's one of the comps that the city is now using to support a cap rate shared by the entire city. And that is not very impressive and not very representative, in my opinion, of the typical at 191 Roche. If you flip to page 24, you'll see 394 Talbot, and Talbot is between 2, one's kind of semi-commercial and the other's a house. Again, don't know how indicative it is, but again, both of these were purchased for renovation. And then 285 Maxwell seems to have a little more pizzazz to it, and again, it was purchased for the same reason. So gentlemen, I respectfully submit that you consider a cap rate for the subject property of 6%, which is at the high end of the Collier's 5 to 6%. I would ask that you ignore the 4 comps provided by the city. If you do look at Ward, you would start at 5.23 and make adjustments since 215 for that. But I would ask that it be 6%, and that's supported by the third-party reports, more particularly Collier's. And in so doing, I would ask for an assessment of $16,357,996 as shown on page 3 of our brief. Thank you.
Mr. Lucky, you have any questions on both the rebuttal and the information presented?
I do. Bear with me, I just got the rebuttal right now.
You just got the rebuttal? You got this one. I thought you didn't,
I just got it
oh, okay.
right now,
Oh, have a-
or just before.
Okay.
So, your brief, the last page, page 12.
Mhm.
Um,
I don't have page 12.
Very good.
Well, it's
Okay.
page 60
Oh,
of the appraisal, or page 12 of your brief, last page.
Last page of the brief?
It's a brief.
no, it's the last page of the rebuttal brief, isn't it?
No,
Oh.
last page of your brief.
yeah, I do that too, it's my copy has other
Okay,
pages.
we got it.
Anyway, it's page 60 of the appraisal.
Yeah, it's only page 6 now. Oh,
Right.
let's go there. Hang on.
So it's
Give me a minute, Rob, I'll do that.
sure, yeah.
I think it's the next page of where you're marking it there, this story.
Where are we?
Is it not the next page of that one?
This one here?
No, no.
Oh, here. Yes, this is,
Okay. So page,
I'm almost there, just a second. Okay, we have it.
we're there. At least somebody's there.
That's why we have ignition.
So page 60 of the appraisal,
Yes,
and I assume HW is Hopper Wilkinson.
yes, correct.
And from memory, was it Marge? It was an ACI, doesn't matter.
I don't know who produced that, we can find it.
I think it's in the rebuttal, Mr. Lodge.
Yeah,
Yeah, so anyway, it was done by an
yes, it was, yeah,
ACI.
yeah. The
Hopper
purposes,
Wilkinson is a reputable,
yes,
I think they merged with Altus,
in
whatever
all
it
of
was.
this, yes, that's correct.
So, a company very familiar with commercial appraisals. And in the front end of, like at the top, it says, remaining sales 17 and 18 are reported or pending sales. So that would tell us that the appraiser considered 18 comparable properties to form a cap rate.
Well, I don't know, we'd have to read to it, it's here.
Right.
I don't know. I
Well,
can't-
comparable 18 would be in the.
I've read
18.
through the appraisal a number of times, and they brought
Yeah.
up some, yeah.
Right. So their opinion, experts,
Yeah.
they used a 5% cap rate.
The Mar West family owned 35 apartment blocks.
Right.
They buy and renovate, they have a construction company, they have a development company. I would think that they're pretty astute as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And when they looked at it, they didn't like the 5%. They weren't prepared to buy for 5%. And they're defining the market, they're the market, it's a transaction.
Okay.
So they looked at it and said, we're negotiating at a 5.5% if they're interested. They offered 18 million, they accepted it. So that in itself makes it 5.23.
Okay.
But I think they're pretty astute, and Hoffer Wilkinson, I
Yeah, I'm not
have no
doubting it.
objections to
Yeah,
anything they do, but
I've had dealings with them.
it scared me when they did indicate that part of the justification for the 5% is the declining trend in capitalization rates, but I didn't find anything in there that indicated there was cap rate compression, but it is in here as just above the bond.
Yeah, that's another.
That scares me a bit if I were purchasing.
Okay, and then in your rebuttal, so the decision on page 9, and the part that's underlined here,
Page 9 of the decision, Rob?
right,
Page-
in your rebuttal.
Page 6 of the decision, I think.
Page 6 of the decision, page 9 of your rebuttal.
We won't do that double counting, double numbering anymore.
I don't even have numbers half the time, so this is pretty good.
Yeah.
It says, the board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale.
Yes.
A renovation must be a significant financial investment on the part of a property owner one that will cause future rents to substantially increase and should usually involve modification to a building envelope, structural walls, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Didn't one of yours show like some renovations for 100,000, like on page 11?
Yes.
Is that
Well, no,
significant?
not ours. These are the cities. These are the city's comps.
Well, this is what the purchaser provided. It says that they're planning on doing some suite updates. It's $100,000
Yeah, that's one of your comps. That's,
on,
these are 3 city comps plus
Sid, let
one.
him finish his question, then you'll know what to answer.
well, is 100,000 on 3.6 million significant upgrading?
To me, 100,000 is pretty
That's
significant.
a lot of money, I
It
don't
may
know,
not
but-
be. To
Yeah.
others, it may not be, but
But it's
you
not.
renovate based on where you can recover it. And some of these people don't do the entire renovation at once, they would phase it in over time. I don't know. But 100,000 is still 100,000. The intent was to renovate. They were looking at a potential opportunity other than just the NOI of the building as a
But the
whole.
decision said they have to be significant. And
It should
what-
be significant,
what-
correct. They
and-
also talk about that it should
Hey,
also.
gentlemen, I think we're just talking about what's significant. You're both disagreeing, let's move on to the next.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have any further.
Mr. McPherson, questions?
Yeah, sorry, and I know this is out of turn, but I should have asked the assessor before. On your brief, how come the 2016 sale doesn't show up?
It was a share sale, so it doesn't go through land tax.
But you're using it as a comparable
It was a
for the cap
reported,
rates.
it was reported to us. Believe it to be a sale. But we don't have the land titles transfer, so it doesn't show up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Story, you went through the calculations and showed that the $18 million purchase price was actually a 5.23% cap rate.
Yes. Because we only paid 18, not 18.
Right, so now you're suggesting 6%, so rather than not just a compression of cap rates or a level term of cap rates, you're actually saying the cap rates have increased since that year?
Well, we're looking at there's been no cap rate compression cycle over cycle from Colliers. We're using Colliers because they seem the most reputable, plus we're trying to balance it off with our own information. There has been a change, and the change has been that there may be more risk because they overbuilt some condos, and a lot of condos that didn't sell have been converted to apartments. We have a number of those. So I don't know if it may very well be because of that. There may be more supply than there was a couple of years ago. But I'm going by the high end of the range because it's wood construction. And that's from the Colliers range. But I can't point my finger and tell you the cap rate overall has gone up, but I don't believe it went down either. And this was a purchase at 5.5. In their opinion, people who bought it thought they paid that.
How come it's their opinion it was 5.5 if you calculate it out to 5.23?
Because the economy of scale, if you look at they looked at this thing and said, we can do this if they've got property management and people living caretaker on site, and they're all 2-bedroom apartments, which means when you're giving the caretaker an apartment, you're giving them $1,000, there's $1,000 a month or something of that nature in there. So they thought that they could do some economies of scale. They just did it on 2 properties we're doing in a few minutes, Kearney and Belleville, where the buildings are close to each other. There used to be 2 caretakers, 1 in each building. Now they use 1 caretaker for 2, and they saw an opportunity here.
I get that.
They
but
justified the 5.5.
Where's their adjacent or close proximity apartment block where
Well,
they
the
can
2
share?
that I just mentioned are close enough.
No, but I'm saying to work.
I'm telling you, even Kearney and Belleville could be. They've got
But that,
St.
you
Anne's.
said that's
They have a
recent.
number of apartments over there.
But you said that's recent.
I did Belleville and
Right.
Kearney,
But this
were two
ward,
apartments,
Right.
let me finish,
Yeah,
you're
please
jumping
do.
ahead. In the same end of town,
right,
on Bellevue and Dakota over there. And what they did is they did a renovation of those apartments. And one of the things they did is at the time, I don't know if they're still doing it, they were experimenting with one caretaker, not two, because the buildings, you can see them. Ward, you can't see another building that they own, but they have 403 St. Anne's, which we're doing today, that's close. Kearney and Bellevue are close enough for a caretaker. But they didn't, it was, what they saw, they made an adjustment to the NOI and the due diligence. I don't have the evidence for that, I have the evidence for the 5.34%. But I'm telling you that I was involved in some of those conversations, and they thought that they had some economies by having the other apartment buildings as well. And one of the things that concerned them is when you have all two-bedroom apartments, oftentimes the caretaker suite is the smaller or the least attractive in the property, and that's not the case in this one. They can't either have a caretaker or you don't.
that's my only question, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Monsieur Therrien?
Yes, on your page 10 of your evidence, the Cushman and Wakefield report shows on apartments, middle of the page more or less, a range of 5, a low of 5, and a high of 5.75.
Yes.
You also show on the next page 11, the Colliers report a multifamily of a low rise, low of 5 and high of 6.
Correct.
Now, you're using a 6% cap rate today.
Yes.
There's one question that I'm maybe relating to this, and because I heard all your evidence there, so I know what that is. You mentioned there is no basement in this building. Would that have some effect on the cap rate or not?
Well, it may. It all depends on the purchaser. If the purchaser has some difficulty, they had to do some work on it. Kilroy Crozier did some engineering because it was draining back into the crawl space. Water was draining back, so they had to do a bit of work, but not tens of thousands. They did work.
And there's no parking on the inside, it's all outside?
No, it's outside, but it's a shelter. It's just, you'll
It's a
see in the
sheltered
picture.
parking?
It's like a carport, and it's
Okay.
removed from the building. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So if we take into account your 5.23, which we have the evidence on today,
Yeah.
the 5.5, we do not have the evidence because you have not produced the evidence on that other than the
Other than
verbal that you were in discussion
verbalizing.
on it.
Yeah.
I'm still having trouble getting you up to 6%. Like it was on the Altus study, you said? Maybe I missed it.
No, it said Altus doesn't have a.
Who had the
I
study
believe
you were
it's
using? You were using whose number for the 6?
You asking me?
Yes,
Colliers.
you're using Colliers.
Yes.
And where is that number in the
Page
sheet?
11.
Page 11. Page 11 of my brief. 5 to 6%.
Page 11 of your brief,
Yeah.
multifamily, 5 to 6. So, what brings it up to the 6?
Well, I think part of what brings it up to 6, if you look at the pictures, it's not the right term. I'm not going to say it's dated, but if you go to some of the Crystal buildings, some of the new buildings they're doing, pretty elaborate balconies, amenities that this property doesn't have, I think. So I think when you look at it, it's a range, 5 to 6. We also, I haven't loved it, we also had a number of decisions last year, and some this year at 5.5 as well.
Yeah, but you're asking 6.
Yes.
The decisions were all 5.5 before.
Yeah, but they're not identical buildings, you have to make adjustments for them. Yeah, we're asking for 6. At 5.5, I did do an example for you. At 5.5, if you go to page 9 of our main brief, which is the actual income statement, and if you take the actual net income,
Let me find the page before you.
page 9,
Yeah,
and that's got the, this is the
that's with the NOI of 982,936.
982, you divide by 5.5, you do after 17,871. Yeah. And I did we do an actual with the assessor, we do an actual to verify the expense ratio. And everything is kind of in line with the city on their, everything other than cap rate, we disagree. And we believe it's between 5 and 6. I believe because of the nature of the building, and there are some issues, not earth-shattering, but there were some issues that, with respect to construction, they may have been remedied now.
No, in your verbal, you said that the NOI was 987,214 on the sale.
On the sale, it was, let me get this right here.
At a 5.5 cap. It made it 17,949,000, but not 18 million. Rounded, I guess, it was 18 million.
The NOI on the appraisal, which didn't come out to 18 million, you gotta remember.
No, this is on your page 3.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's never been a sale of this property at 18,820, which is 5%. It was at 18 million is all they got for it.
Yeah.
And that's supported by the assessor's number. And just for clarity, it was not a share sale. It was a purchase. I don't believe it was a share
They
sale.
purchased all the shares.
No, they purchased the building, they purchased the property. There's no, I don't believe it was a bare trust or anything of that nature. I think it's a bought. But it's not reported because well, that number doesn't, there's no $18 million.
But-
18,820, there's no sale at that amount.
Not at 8, no, but at 18 there was.
18 there was, correct.
And that's what I'm saying. And using the 5.5 cap
And use that, yeah,
on the 987,
yeah.
you're still coming up to 17,949,000, which rounded to the 18 million, I guess. Back then. So what's driving the cap higher than the 5.5 that you're proposing here? We know the actual, you're basing the actual at 523 on the sale somehow, because you're using a 940.
Well, if you take the actual, you take the NOI
Yeah.
over the purchase price, that's the cap rate.
Yep.
Okay, there was an error made in one of the reporting agencies, ended up getting possession of this appraisal, which wasn't written for the purchase. And it was marketed on the basis of that, but the purchasers didn't pay 18,800,000, they paid 18. And that means that the cap rate was not 5, but rather
5.23.
5.23.
Yeah.
So that's what the actual was, not,
Yeah.
and 5 was the thing that gave rise to all those 5s all last year. Ward came up in every hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and it shouldn't have, because it was wrong. And I came and said, that's not what they paid for it. So last year, it should have been 5.25, just based on the purchase.
So how did they drive that $987 NOI for that year for the sale?
The NOI for the sale was 948.64.
987, you said. On the next one, Mar West Inc.
No, no.
purchased the property for 18 million with a cap of 5.5 based on an adjusted NOI.
Yes, the
of
adjusted
987.
NOI, but that's where we don't have proof for it, that's the caretaker. There's there's $90,000 in caretaking. They believe there was an economy there, that they wouldn't have to spend that. So they made an adjustment for the due diligence of the cap rate to 5.5, assuming that they could reduce the expenses by having a shared cost on either the caretaker or the manager. But if you go straight off, forget the due diligence, if you go straight off the 940, it's 5.23%. It's the cap rate. And this is a building with, it's frame, it's wood frame, it's got crawl space rather than basement, it's got some parking, but it's removed from the building. If the range of multi-tenant buildings in the city of Winnipeg, in all sectors, in all communities, is 5 to 6%, and I would think because of the configuration, the number of the suite issue, that it would be at the higher end of the range, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, I've got no further questions. Anything else in summation, Mr. Lucky?
So who developed the property originally?
I'm not sure who the builder was. I mean, it was built in 206, they bought it
Right.
this last year, a couple of years ago. I don't know who built it, did he?
There was a group of partners.
Oh.
That's why it was a share sale.
Yeah, well, there's indications on the appraisal that there was some dispute between, that's why they did the appraisal, not to sell it.
Right, okay. No, I don't have any further questions. I think we've, this poor horse is begging for water.
Okay. Thank you, everyone on that. Let's move on to the next
And
problem.
can we assume that we can carry forward some of the cap?
The caps, yes, we will carry that forward, the rebuttal.
Unless you wanna.
We don't want to hear it
discuss
each
it
time,
every time.
Ask them answer it unless there's something
yeah,
specific.
unless there's something specific.
I have no more questions unless something comes up.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
let's move on to the next property, 200 Gulliver.
200 Belleville.
Just a sec, Rob.
Speaking of the devil, there it is.
Mr. Chair, can I have 1 minute, run down the hall?
Sure, let's shut it down for a minute. Next property will be 200 Belleville, we're back in session. Mr. Lucky, you got the floor.
200 Belleville is roll number, oh, let's start with file number 19-4645, roll number 080041395500. We have 3 buildings, 2-story, original, built in 1971. From the previous hearing, I heard that it was renovated. There's 150 suites. Page 2, we have all the returns up to date, and we show a 2011 sale of $14,088,210. On page 3, these are our model income and expense parameters. And we have suite mix of 48 1-bedrooms, 102 2-bedrooms, for a total of 150. The average total income divided by the suites is $1,073.80. Our model parameters differ from the actuals, and when I looked at the actuals, the building, based on the income and expense statement, has significantly higher NOI. $1,242,000 is the NOI on the I&E. This building, I guess, the age, we have a cap rate of 5.3%. And I would ask, since we haven't applied for an increase, that you maintain the assessment. That's all I have.
Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, Mr. Lucky, you mentioned the NOI, what was that number?
From the statement,
From the questionnaire? Or the
well,
financial
the
statement?
income statement.
Okay, and
And the income statement attached,
if you got amortization line. You said something about a $1 million NOI. Where was that?
That's what I heard.
for whatever reason, I don't know, do you have page 1 of the income statement in brief, or is it missing?
Yeah, it starts with revenue rental income, 2,000,001. You're 1 of 3?
I'm missing that page for whatever reason, sorry. Oh, here it is. Mine's out of order. So, the net income is 1,870,000.
And where are you getting that?
The income statement, page 1 of 3.
Okay. Oh, you're talking net rental income, 1,070,000?
Right.
No, you said net income, NOI.
Oh, NOI, if the expenses were, total property expenses on page 2 of 3 is 651,905, and then I added the operators' expenses and the meals and vehicles to arrive at 660,623, whereas we have a much higher expense amount of 927. So if you take, actually, I'll get you the exact numbers here in a second. So it should be 1,903,442 minus 660,623 equals, the NOI should be 1,242,820, not 954,659. This is our model generated NOI. The actual is significantly higher.
Is that the answer you were looking for, Mr. Story?
No. Which if you want, it's okay. I didn't.
I mean, if we were here to
You're
look
doing
at,
the calculation. Mr. Lucky's doing the calculation, I take it, of adding up all the different expense categories against the.
well, I'm looking at the statement, page 1, it
Yeah.
says the NOI is, or I should say the revenue is 1,903, which is a tiny bit higher than ours.
Now, where do you get the 1,903?
Page 1 of 3 of the income and
Oh,
expense
okay.
statement.
Okay. So,
And I think it's the same as what you have.
yes, read the supplement.
It's very close.
Okay, yeah, let's move on.
So we're within a few thousand there.
I think you guys are just arguing cap rate.
It's all capital, yeah, that's
So
all.
why are
I
we
mean,
going
it-
through, why are we going through all this if you're just gonna argue cap rate? Give us the reasons on the cap rate, guys.
Well, we've been through the cap rate.
Yeah, but is there anything specific to this property that would put the cap rate where
Well, it's older.
It's older.
The other building was 2006, this one's 1971, although it's been renovated. And our cap rate for this building is 5.3.
Sid, on to your presentation.
Okay, this is a question for Mr. Lucky. if I
Sure.
may. Mr. Lucky, you're not suggesting there's been cap rate compression in this market in the last 2 years, are you, in the last cycle?
I haven't done any studies of where cap rates have gone.
Okay. Are you aware that the cap rate used on this property last year was 5.5% in 2018?
It doesn't say here. It says that the last time it was heard, Don Mitchelson was the chair, and the assessment was maintained. It doesn't say it.
Well,
Oh,
the
no,
assessment-
sorry.
The assessment was
No,
dropped
no,
to
it was
16 million.
It was reduced, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
And the cap rate in the decision was 5.5.
Correct.
I don't know what our model was.
Okay. And these
They
are,
reduced it, yeah, well, a little less than 800,000. Not to say that,
Is that it for your question, Sid?
yeah,
What is,
No questions, thank you.
Mr. McPherson?
Just one, your cap rate is based on what factors? What significant factors go into?
well, the model looks at many things. It looks at actual cap rates. It looks at, I think Mr. Story called it third-party, I call them experts, people in the business. And it looks at the model.
Right, but to develop that model, is it primarily, would it be like the area or neighborhood that it's in, the age and the size of the property?
It's mainly age and size, and there is increased cap rates for, well, in some other areas,
Right.
not relating to any of these.
Right, and this one being 5.3 versus the 5 is based on the age?
I would think so.
And is there a breaking point for an age? Like, are they stratified?
I believe so. I don't.
But
have
you're
the-
not sure
I
where
don't
the
have the,
breaking-
I don't have the exact.
All right.
It's about 74, I think.
And there's no,
This one would be at the top end.
and there's no significant upgrades or anything on this property to warrant a age variant, or there's been no significant work as far as you know?
I don't know one way or the other.
Okay, so this model is based on average condition.
That's right.
And that average condition is according to the age of the property. It's average for the age of the property.
Right.
Okay, thank you. No questions, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Story, on with your presentation, please.
okay, I'll just hand over this decision if I may. From last year. Excuse me. Just out of clarification, and Mr. Lucky maybe give us a more specific date, but I believe that the renos on this property are post-reference or after the reference date. You don't have any record of any changes or building permits, do you?
I don't have building permits here, no.
Because they're, yeah, I believe the renovations have happened, but not, but hadn't happened at the reference date. Pretty straightforward, we're handling, it's an older property built in 1971. They have,
Why don't you just tell us what about the cap rate?
cap rate should be,
You've agreed on everything else. so
yes, yeah. I wanted to hear my-
I don't have to hear it all, no.
That was my realtor's talk. Here's like the realtor's talk. I'm asking for a 6% cap rate, which would be 15, 9, 10, up from the 5.3 that the assessor is suggesting, based on age, location, condition, configuration of suites, parking ratios are pretty good on this one. But I believe 6 is reasonable for an older apartment building. In need of renovations that probably have happened. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Lucky?
So you're saying that the building was renovated?
It and Kearney were both scheduled for renovation, and I believe that Kearney was done before the reference date. This one wasn't. You can tell by the financial statement that, because it's very disruptive, they actually vacated a goodly portion of it.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. McPherson?
You handed out this board revision order,
Yeah,
and what's the significance of that?
this cap rate,
Just the cap rate?
yeah. I asked
So-
Mr. Lucky if there's been, in his history, if there's been
Right.
compression in cap rate.
Right, but it does show a revised assessment of 16,153,000. Was that appealed further to the municipal board?
No,
But yet you're suggesting the value has gone down since the last cycle?
we're getting older, we're all getting older.
Mhm.
Please speak for yourself.
All right, thank you.
Maurice?
Yeah, could you say a little more about the renovations on this? I thought you had mentioned that, Mr. Lucky, that it had been renovated when you gave your evidence. When did the renovations take
I believe it
place?
was after the April of 2018.
After April the 1st?
Yes.
I think you mentioned that.
There were two done together, Kearney and Belleville, they're side by side.
Okay.
And I believe Kearney was done by the reference date, although it's still the same effective age as the city hasn't changed.
Except we're looking at the building in its present condition.
Yes, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've got no questions. Let's move on to the next one, 2390 McPhillips. Mr. Lucky, when you are ready.
Just one sec, please.
2390. Don't tell me we need another break.
No, I got 9 files, I gotta figure out where they are.
We're gonna know who the oldest ones are in this room just by that. Coffee.
Hang on, I have it.
So look at, yeah,
Re-advertising of
these aren't recyclable cups.
it. Nope. Don't surprise me.
Especially being at Red River.
Right.
They have like a huge program for recycling.
Mhm. Let us know when you're ready, Sid.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, sorry. File number 19-4652. We have roll number 0500-942-4635. And this is 2390 McPhillips. Grand Joyce Sales.
You're doing the whole cap thing again on this one, guys.
Again?
There's a new building, relatively new.
It's a newer building for sure. Again, if you look at the income and expense statement, our model generated a much lower NOI. Our NOI is 788, 749. Based on the expense statement, it's 913, 600. So I would ask that our assessment is more than generous and that you maintain the assessment. The previous go-around, I think this one was maintained at 14,335,000. Nothing further to add.
Questions, Mr. Story?
Yes, just one sec. No, I'm fine.
Good. Mr. McPherson? You good?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
And Mr. Perrien?
I'm fine, thank
So
you.
am I. Let's move on to you, Mr. Story. Noticing that you're only asking for a change in the cap rate.
Yes.
Give us the reasons why.
This is new construction, relatively new construction. It's called the Lady Joyce. It's located on, it's called McPhillip Street, but it's actually off, it borders on the parking lot of Walmart. It's behind the car dealership. Land was taken away from the car dealership or subdivided off. So it's a bit atypical. It's worked out. The people that live there frequent the Walmart and the merchants, but it's a little bit, it's a little bit of a unique location. I've looked at it here and I would suggest just for equity with properties like Ward and some of these others that use the same parameters that the board consider 6% as a cap rate.
Questions, Mr. Leckie? Mr. McPherson?
Just one, 6% cap rate, you're saying that new construction should be the same as old construction?
No, I think it should be a lesser cap rate, there's less risk. But this has a bit of a history to it. This property is atypical in terms of where it's located relative to. And I think that may affect this. A purchaser may wonder, may take that into consideration, may not. May take it as a positive. It's on a Walmart parking lot. So it's commercial adjacent. Some people argue commercial adjacent is a plus, some will say it's a negative.
Is there a vacancy issue with this property?
No, it's doing very well, very well. It's a tribute to Mrs. Gochi, she passed away her name's Joyce.
Thank you.
What is?
Thank you.
This is a brick, this one, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And it's brick and steel, it's not
Yeah,
a
it tells
wood-
you here.
It's not a wood building like the one on.
No, no, no.
So would that not give it a lower?
It's nice.
I'm sorry,
Cap rate.
it says wood or steel framed exterior walls. Does that mean wood frame? I'm not sure. I'm not a contractor.
Our people that inspect them don't dig into the walls, but I do remember the assessor that put it on the roll met with the manager and said they have, at that time, a waiting list to get. That's all.
Yes, it was received better than expected.
We put his top car salesman in charge of leasing.
It's his son,
Good sign.
his son, Randy.
But the building itself is superior to the one on Ward.
Yes, it
Correct?
is, yeah, yeah.
So it should have a little less rate than.
Well, one would assume so,
than what
but
you're-
it's 5.5 max. But, sorry, you know, we had this situation in the city of Winnipeg where all of these multi-tenant have the same
But-
cap rate.
I'm just saying, maybe if we started working
Yeah,
towards the middle
yeah.
between the city
No,
and
I'm
you,
saying-
you know, we might actually not have
Yeah.
to change our cap rates, you guys might be on the same ball.
Yeah,
But that, we'll make the decisions that are necessary on that file. Thank
it
you,
might be
folks. Do you have any
5.5
questions?
maybe more appropriate.
You already did, good, we're done. Thank you. Are you doing better now, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Oh,
Next one is 299 Kearney Street, this one. on this one, cap rate.
Yes. And this is very
Or
similar.
he starts, those it.
Yeah,
When you're ready, Mr. Lucky, don't forget to read the info on first.
Sure. Ready?
Yep.
File number 19-4660, roll number 0800-414-5700. We have 229 Kearney Street. And again, similar to Bellow told. 1972, we've got 126 suites. And a 2011 sale. All the returns are up to date. The Stories accepted our NOI, which is
785,662.
yeah, which is about 300,000 lower than the actual. So again, I would ask, our assessment is more than generous. The previous go around, the assessment was maintained. It was, I don't have the number, but it was maintained. That's all I have.
Any questions, Mr. Story?
Mr. Lucky, when on page 1 of your brief, when it shows 1972-72, the same effective age, that would indicate that major renovations have not happened? Is that a bad assumption?
No, all it tells us is that we haven't,
You have an adjustment.
we either haven't picked them up yet or inspected it yet, or we have looked at it and decided not to change it. I don't know which it is.
Those are all my questions.
McPherson?
Have none, thank you.
And Mr. Therrien?
Any effect, I see the sale of close to 13 million on page 2, 12,000,009. Has this been, do you know anything about that sale? Or I want to see how it's related to the 14.8 we're looking at right now.
I didn't verify the sale.
You didn't? Okay. 1972 building. Okay, that's all, thank you.
I've got no question. Mr. Story, on to your reasons why you think it should be a 6% cap.
Yes, based on age, location, condition, it was in need of renovation. I believe some or all of it's done now, and it would speak to the current condition, but that would be up to the assessor to go and inspect it and make that determination. It's 28, 19, it's 40 years old. It's got a different style, there are no balconies or anything of that nature, to the best of my recollection. So I think that the 6% is a reasonable cap rate for this property and goes hand in hand with development.
Any questions, Mr. Lucky?
No, I don't.
Mr. McPherson?
No questions.
Mr. Therrien?
So, you're asking for 13,094,000, and sale of 2011 was 12,912,000.
Correct.
So pretty close. So
Yeah, that sale was-
So we're saying that the building has not, are you saying the building has not, and you said it's been renovated,
Yes,
so it has not increased in value? Is that what you're saying? Since the purchase?
well, the purchase was, not necessarily because the purchase, as in the municipal board was discussed, that that when some of these contractors have crews available, sometimes they'll pay, they might overpay, I don't know. But I can't tell you exactly what the rationale is. I know they bought it as a rental, they bought it with the intention of increasing rents. All this stuff happened when $1,000 a month became palatable, which is just in the last few years. And so people saw opportunities to buy places that were $600 to $800, do a renovation, get rent control for a period, and then try to get them back, infill them back in at higher rates, and at rates are higher these days. 1,000 is not uncommon.
So it's been renovated since the purchase.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Story and Mr. Teddy. Let's move on to the next property, which will be 190 Raymond Place. Let us know when you're ready, Mr. Story.
Okay.
Again, we're having a discrepancy on cap rate on this one, so Mr. Lucky, when you're ready, read on your information.
File number 19-4672, roll number 06081926000190 Raymond Place. What we have here is it's assisted living.
Yes, independent living. Robert.
Independent living. Sorry, I'm always corrected. Independent living. Right, and this is kind of a conglomerate of buildings and renovations and additions and that kind of thing. Somehow we arrived at a effective age of 1970. And there's 103 suites or units, and they're all bachelors, and there's meal programs and services and that type of thing. Anyway, we agree on the NOI, and speaking of the cap rate in this instance, so if you keep page 3 open, the actual income is $2,546,000. The expenses are $1,998,818 for an NOI of $547,311. Now, I work on a lot of these types of properties, and the argument for a higher cap rate is that there's a lot of risk. Well, you can see that we've taken all the risk out. We're not assessing the meal programs, the business, everything. If all that was scrapped and taken out, I show you that these bachelor rents of $550 are more than attainable through other typical seniors in the area. So I would ask that you please don't consider this as a risky venture, because all of it has been taken out. You have a renovated building with 103 bachelor units, and if you looked at that as our model does, we put it at the lowest quality possible. That's why the expense ratio is so high at 53.48%. That's poor. So I would suggest that, again, you know, we're not looking at a high-risk cap rate. We're looking at something that's been dumbed down so much that it's very low risk. So anyway, I would ask that you maintain a cap rate of 5.1.
Mr. Story, any questions?
Mr. Lucky, over the years, you and I have inspected it together, haven't we?
I haven't been in here, no.
You've never been in
I've
it?
seen pictures of it, we've
Okay.
sent other people to see it. I've done a lot of work on it.
You're aware that there are no appliances of any nature in any suites?
That, I take your word for that, I
Yeah,
don't know, I
there
haven't
aren't
been in
any.
it.
And you're aware that the suites they range from, there's 27 of them are 219 to 360 square feet, they're about half the size of this room, is that right?
Right, there's a lot of common area where they have their dining
The
and games.
basements where they'd be dining, in the basements, not
Okay,
out
but there's common area.
And it's really not, it's not geared, the other independent living, all this spectacular stuff that's done, is geared with the cap rate takes into consideration the fact that once the baby boomers pass through the system, they'll have apartment blocks left. They're now building
Right,
underground parking, as you're aware, at Paget. This doesn't have that opportunity. This is a building, initial building built in 1950, correct? Right? Built in
I'm
19
not sure, I have
Well, you're
multiple.
1950 to 91, but I know. it's-
Okay, yeah, right,
I brought the appraisal as well.
right, yeah, the original,
And were you and I not involved in, have we not discussed the cap rate when they bought it?
well, the sale, was that back in 11 for
Yeah.
11 million?
Yeah. You and I the cap rate, okay.
Right, it would be a cap rate higher
It was
based
eight
on
and a
the.
quarter. 8.25. So what happens in congregate care, which this is independent living,
Right,
you pay a fixed fee and you get your meals and your transportation and your entertainment and your physical activity, et cetera, correct? Then to get the assessment department, what they've done with the independent living in the city of Winnipeg is taken out the business element and
Right.
ending up with the real estate element, saying, well, if this were an apartment, what would it lease for?
right,
But this can't lease as an apartment because it's not geared to be an apartment, it's more like, I mean, how would you describe it? They're small little rooms, half the size of this
right,
room.
there's seniors.
So nobody's gonna convert that to an apartment block, they'd have problems with venting or anything of that nature, with cooking available. So they don't share that risk is an offset by the opportunity to convert it to an apartment. Would you agree with that, from what you know about it?
Well, I mean, there's always gonna be seniors, and,
Yeah, but see, hang on. This can't be an apartment block. If this isn't a personal care home, that's called called independent living, it can't just become an apartment block the next day.
is it a care home?
It's got RNs on staff, so they have different classification. But it's treated as independent living, where they make one payment for everything. But they have RNs on staff that
Oh, you know what?
they can dole out their prescriptions where they can't in
Sorry
Paget
to-
and the other ones.
Sorry to interrupt, but is this like Stradbrook that we looked at?
Yes,
That's the one-
495, exactly the
That's the one we
same.
looked at.
Exactly, that's right, you're
So
right.
this is more like that.
Exactly the same,
Right.
yeah. And their suite's a couple hundred square feet. So you really don't have that opportunity, it has to be reflected somewhere, so I'm suggesting be in the cap rate. So they bought it, and I'll pass, it's not my turn, I'm sorry.
I think you're just asking questions.
Yes, okay.
Are you all done with your questions
Yes.
then? Let's see
I
if we-
lost track too.
So I was beginning to, till I got the eye. Mr. McPherson?
Yeah, it's originally built in 1950 and up to 1991, so.
There's two buildings to the church, the
Right.
second building was built
Right,
after.
right. And the second building, I'm assuming, was built with these bachelor suites and with an eye to making it an independent living facility? You don't?
I haven't been in it, I'm
Okay.
not sure exactly, but
Okay, so I'll be asking.
there was,
the
there was
applicant.
1991 additions.
Right, but the 1950, the original, that was just, did they do any structural changes, as far as you know? Or was that just an apartment block that had bachelor suites?
don't think it was an apartment.
No, it's never been an apartment.
Has it been something to do with the church?
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, it was a nunnery.
It was
wasn't
a
It was
nunnery
a convent,
convent?
that's what we called it back.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I thought.
The Green Nuns.
And
So the original building would have been like dorm style?
Right, so this, you said something about 547,311 NOI. That's removing the
That-
meals and,
No, that's the actual income, the actual expense, the actual NOI. But that's including all the meals.
oh, that's including all
So,
that.
so the actual income is 2.5 million.
Right,
We're using $550 bachelor rent, which is, that's our number. That's what we use for bachelors, because there's a huge amount of evidence that bachelor units, 550.
and then that's what you've included here.
We're treating it like a
We didn't include
big
anything.
bachelor.
That's it.
The suites are small, but there's common area. There's a lot more, there's significantly more common area than there would be in a typical apartment block, but the suites are much smaller. And there's
The common area would be like a dining facility and exercise
dining
room.
and libraries, and could be,
The original chapel.
I was gonna say there could be chapels, but
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we take into account that there are no cooking facilities within any of the apartments? I mean, I've never seen a bachelor suite without at least some way to cook a meal.
hot plate.
Against the rules.
Right, but, I mean, you also have to consider that the category, like the bachelor unit building at poor condition takes all that into consideration. It's this is the lowest we can get an assessment.
Give me something that's got a bachelor one that's got zero amenities, like zero cooking abilities.
You know, it's hypothetical. This has a big kitchen.
But that's what this
You know,
number
there's
is,
a big
hypothetical.
commercial kitchen. You know, it has a commercial kitchen, it has other facilities, but it doesn't have, and some of these senior places, that's what they're doing. As the seniors are aging, they're taking the stoves out. People forget to turn them off. They have a meal program anyway, they don't need a stove. The seniors complain, I can't bake cookies, you know, my kids come over. Well, they could put in a microwave, they could put in a toaster.
Okay. You've made your case for your,
Right.
I've got a question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I don't think I've got a chance to ask. Do you know if there's a waiting list to get into that place?
I don't know that.
We'll see what the appellant has to say about that. Thank you.
Mr. Story, on with your case.
Yes, I just passed something out just for clarification. Oh, I need to have one of those back, so sorry.
We will say yes.
It's a system.
My aunt is looking at getting into one of these, and I'm looking at it going, there's no freaking way, I'm coming up with $3-4 grand a month to live here.
Mm-hmm. No, not this one.
I've saved it up for retirement as long as I don't retire for more than a couple of months.
As long as you don't retire in one of these. I forget. Well, this one's not bad. This one's actually reasonable.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Story.
Yes, thank you. I just handed something out here. It's from this is an old appraisal, but I'll give it to you for the record as well. This is a purchase of, when they bought Catherine Place and they paid 11 million and change with a 11 million eight with an 8.25 cap. There had never been a sale, pardon me, I should say that. Their independent living, there had been few if any sales. There were some sales that were assisted living and whatnot, but not independent living until this particular property. And then the second page, which is page 28 that I hand out, I think you really have to appreciate the fact that this cannot be an apartment block. These units are small, much smaller than this room we're sitting in. So the bachelors are 219 to 363. Mr. Lucky said a bachelor would generate $550 for 200 square feet, folks. You don't get that. The one bedrooms are 281 square feet to 357. You can see they're very small. None of them have any kitchen equipment or are geared for kitchen equipment. Some of them, to the best of my recollection, don't have washrooms. They have to use a common washroom. But they're, and people, the chair asked, or the board member asked, Mr. Terry asked if there's a waiting list. This one they have to pre-qualify with some health aid, I believe, because they're on a prescription regimen. They have their pills all laid out for them every day. It's quite different. You go to the new ones on Sterling Lion and they've got a lounge and they have dances, and somebody mentioned an exercise room. Well, the folks in this one don't seem to have, they're not that mobile, I don't believe. So, but no, there's no waiting list. I think they can put people in when they qualify. But it's not, the whole key to congregate care means you make one payment, everything's included, is that you want a fallback position. You want to either be by schools, you want to be on transit corridors, you want to be with parking, because you know that your fallback position when the baby boomers who gave rise to all this congregate care across North America, as they pass through the system, as we soon will, there has to be a use for these buildings. And there's no use for this building. Cost, it was built in two sections. Mr. First asked the question. The original building was built for the nunnery, and then it looks like in 70, they built an adjacent building with a walkway, a connection to the two. And the connection takes you into the lower level, which is the basement. That's where the food is served. And it's communal food. So there's no real opportunity here, in my opinion, to convert this to an apartment block. How would you do it? It would cost so much money to convert it, and then you end up with 300 square foot apartments. Who would rent them? You couldn't. So that's the whole basis for that, and I just wanted you to see some of that information. The two sales that have occurred, I think it's on this page.
You already referred to the sale that had the 8 1/4 on it.
Yeah, no, there are two sales of independent living, similar to this. So we're using a 6%. I think, now, if Mr. Lucky is correct, and the city is using the actual income from the food service, it is the hardest, riskiest business in the world. It's running a food service with chefs and cooks and waitresses with no gratuities. So it's not, there's a huge cap rate would be required if you were valuing the business value, but they don't. They try to break out what the real estate value would be as an apartment. They've applied, because it's independent living, a fairly low vacancy of 1.8. We're accepting that. The cap rate at 5.1% should at least be 6%. At 6.2, it's $5 million assessment. At 6.5, it's $4.7 million. 6% is $5,175,000. I believe that the risk associated with it, one has to take a step back and say, would anybody buy it, and who would buy it? Well, they might buy it if they want to own an independent living care facility and be responsible for those meals and security and health calls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. but I believe I believe there's very little market for this. As a matter of fact, Winnipeg Company has about 5 of them in Winnipeg. And I said there's one, the developer's building one right now in Regina, and they came to them because there's such a limited number of people that would buy this type of business because of the nature of it, with the care you have to give and whatnot. And so it's a limited market. If you look at our brief on page 6, there's some photographs. The original building, I believe, is the one on the right, and then that would be the addition. There's the income statement. So I believe for this, because of the age, location, condition, contemporary demand, things that people want, all those bachelors could probably live, if they had balconies, they might be able to live in 300 square feet, but there's no balconies, and the cost of doing balconies would be prohibitive. Life safety issues would be expensive and make it cost prohibitive. So I suggested cap rate is 6%. Thank you.
Mr. Stuckey?
So this page 39 that you handed out, the cap rate of 8 1/4 back in, when is this?
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
So this.
And I should just mention, in 2011, I think there was one other independent living. And if I'm going by memory, but when they opened up Sterling lines, there were 27 of them. So there's been a tremendous amount of growth in that industry.
I guess
There'd only been 1 or 2 sales prior to here this year.
But in 2011, cap rates were a lot higher, weren't they?
Yes.
And this cap rate is reflective of it being a business, because you have the income at
Well,
that,
if you-
at that time of over $2 million.
Yeah, but if you're a restaurant, you'd have a cap rate of 8 to 12%. So it's not if you treat the business element, you have to use a higher cap
Right,
rate because of
that's
the
what
risk.
I'm getting at.
Yeah, but this
So this
this
isn't being
whittles it down.
appraised as a typical, or like a reduced, like we're now at whatever it is, 500 or 600. This cap rate is based on the $2 million and $1 million expenses, so it's as being.
Well, they
run
show
as-
you what it is there, yeah.
Right, so it's being, this is the business and.
Yeah, you-
and
Are we
cap
just gonna
rate.
have a discussion, gentlemen, or we can ask?
Well, I'm just
ask
trying to
questions?
clarify, I mean, this is
So let's do it each our turn then.
At 8% cap rate's been handed out, we're just trying to figure out where it came from. So it's kind of.
Well, that was the
misleading.
actual cap rate at the time. They bought it. That's what the market is. When you buy something, that's
The
valuable.
building and business in
Yes.
2011. Okay.
Absolutely. But historically, this board and the municipal board in Winnipeg, because there's been a few of them, break out the business element because it's got a higher risk. And they whittle it down to what it would generate as an apartment building. They've done it time and time again. And I think you might be flipping that over and putting in where the risk is.
Okay, you said that we couldn't get $550 rent, and yet on my brief on page 4E on Thames,
On Thames?
right,
Okay.
4E,
Yeah.
the bachelor rent for 420 square feet is
Okay, hang on.
722.
4E, you said?
Right,
4E, sorry, let me just get there.
that's in Elmwood, I believe.
I know a little bit about Thames. I know a lot about Thames.
Okay.
Okay. So you're saying the 3-bedroom, which one, the bachelor?
It's-
400.
And this is from the Cedars directory,
Mhm.
and they're advertising, this is 2016 rent,
Mhm.
420 square feet at 722.
Okay. And what is our bachelor?
Well, we use.
Hang on, our bachelor is 219 to 363. So
Right.
this is 25% bigger. Does this have any balconies?
Well, it's also
And gentlemen, you wrote-
50% higher than the rent we're using. So then if you go to 4F, I think we're all familiar with Lyons Manor, right at the corner of Sherbrooke and Portage.
And just let me finish. Do any of these in 4E, do any of them have any cooking equipment? Are they vented to be able to cook? Are you allowed to cook?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do they have
Sure
handicap
you can.
rails on the bathtubs and are they handicap
Yeah,
suites?
I mean, the rent is 50% higher.
Okay, all
Uh,
right.
The 320 Sherbrooke Lyons Manor at Portage. These are 300 square foot bachelors. And this is a nonprofit,
Mhm.
and they're in 16, they're advertising at 590. It's an old housing project that
Yeah,
I guess
built in 65, yeah.
came due and is now run as a nonprofit group.
Do you consider it to be independent living?
No?
They have on-site restaurant, serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
There's a little cafeteria. Yeah. Anyway, that's
Okay.
all I had to say on that.
Mr. McPherson?
I guess my only question is on this handout. This is the subject property we're talking about?
Yes, this is
So
great.
So they converted all of these one-bedroom couples units to bachelors at some point?
There's only 3 of them.
No, it's 27.
There's 12 one-bedrooms, 37 one-bedrooms, 22 one-bedrooms, and 3 couples. But now
I
you're
don't
saying
think-
they're all bachelor?
I didn't say they're all bachelor.
That's what the city said.
I said, that's why I handed this out to show you how small they are.
I said they're all bachelor, but,
Right.
right, the appraisal says that there's 71 one-bedrooms.
Well, there are. And they
But-
have, and you know how they do it. We haven't been in there, but they have a wooden divider in the middle of the room, and they configure it. They can even put 2 people in one room.
I see, so the city considers that to be bachelors because of the size of it. Is that correct?
I suppose, I'm not sure.
But can they be considered bachelors if they don't have any cooking facilities?
There's only 3 of the rooms that can have couples in.
Yes.
The rest are all configured to have one person.
Yeah.
That's why they're called bachelors. So the 1-bedrooms are still considered a bachelor. The only ones that there's 3 rooms that actually have been built for couples.
Yeah,
Correct?
but according to this appraisal, they've broken them out, golden one-bedrooms. But there's no cooking facilities in any of them?
None of them. There's even a few that don't have washrooms, that people are getting, they have a lift, put people in a bathtub and whatnot, it's kind of across the hall. But
Sort
there's,
of a hybrid to a Carol.
yeah, there's a few that don't have any, that
Guess
don't
they
have
should call it
any
bachelor-
bathrooms
bachelorette.
even.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Maurice?
Yeah, just a point, the assessor refers to assisted living, you refer to it as independent living, but I just want to make that comment.
Yes.
But I'm looking at risk, because we're talking about 6%.
Yeah.
Now, when we're looking at risk, and you talked about resale, and there's no waiting list in this case. You talked about all the expansion that's been happening since 2011 on this type of assisted living, and you gave examples. Let me finish, sir.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at risk. So you're saying, first of all, there's no waiting list. Number 2, there's this expansion of business, and people are getting older. Now, how do we justify, because you talked about approximation to schools and different things in your presentation, well, this is a different clientele. So where is the risk when we're seeing how how the evolution is taking place. So I've got a really hard time to see the risk, because I don't think these people wanna sell. So that's my question to you. You're justifying 6% based on risk.
Mhm.
I've got a hard time to deal with that.
Well, I don't, to be honest with you, I do some of this in west as well, I just an independent living, quite a number of them. And I haven't seen a 6% cap rate on a sale. They generally trade higher because it's perceived to be more risk, because you're running a restaurant, you're running an Uber delivery service, you're transporting people to shopping centers, bingo casinos. It's a very, very difficult business to be in, and very few people are in it, quite frankly. However, what I was saying is what this board has done, and I go back to many years when the first one was built on Bolton Bay, which is early 2000s, we went to municipal board to try to find out what the approach should be. And the boards have been breaking out the income portion that relates to the business side of it. So then what do you end up with then? Well, if you're 85 Paget, you end up with a building that's got underground parking in the seniors' home. You certainly, none of the folks in Raymond Place, based on what I've seen, and I've been there a number of times, are driving cars. They're not. Staff has cars, they don't have cars. But what happens is your risk is mitigated if you know that when the baby boomers pass through, that that property might have a secondary use, i.e. an apartment block. So they're building them, and Mr. Lucky's 100% right. They're building them with stoves and fridges and everything else, but they really encourage the people to get out and socialize. That's what keeps them young. They don't really want them in the rooms, but they know they have to do that to have an asset at the end. Otherwise, you'll end up with Raymond Place, which is very small cubicles or dormitory style. So when this particular property doesn't have that, because half of it's built in or more than half, built in 1950. So by the time the baby boomers get through, the thing is going to be a heritage building. It may very well be already. And you don't necessarily have that fallback position that you just converted to an apartment. The cost to do the life safety issues, to make it an apartment, to bring in gas and cooking facilities and air makeup and exhaust fans, etc., would probably be cost prohibitive. So this is not something that should be compared to the newer independent living, because they're built with the future in mind as well. Principle of anticipation, what they think is going to happen. So I believe that 6% is a very, very low rate, and I don't, you indicated these people aren't selling it. No, they're not. To the best of my knowledge, it's not for sale. But they have a number of them, and they have some sharing of resources.
Thank you, Mr.
With
Chairman.
respect to waiting lists, I think I may be wrong, Mr. Lucky may even know. I don't think they have a waiting list per se. I think that you have to be, I can't remember the name, but they did it also at 495 Stradbrook. They have to be qualified to get home care,
Panel.
you know. Anyway, there's a reason.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's got a medical component. They have to have RN on staff, where the independent livings don't typically. But I think that's, I can't give you much more than that. It's-
Assessment, you have to be assessed.
Yes, yes.
Funny term.
I'd be careful if probably put me in there.
I've been told I'm going in the cheapest one possible.
And the other thing, and Mr. Lucky, you know this from your experience, everybody is the waiting lists are a bit artificial. It's the family put grandpa or grandma on the waiting list, and grandma and grandpa aren't ready, and so they keep getting put back in the waiting list.
Yeah.
But waiting lists are different than for a typical property. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Let's
Thank you.
move on
This
to
is-
the next property.
This for your file, that's the appraisal. What's next, Mr. Chair?
The next property will be 1626 Magnus Avenue.
Okay.
item to follow, what's that mean?
Yeah. Here's the request.
Additional information to follow with
Yeah.
rebuttal awaiting details from
Yes,
client.
yeah, that's,
So what is it?
yeah.
I guess that's what we call a surprise, and
No, we didn't, this is a new client and we didn't have the information and the due date came up and we wanted to appeal because it is located and so we did.
in that case, you'll have to run the information by Mr. Leckie first to see if we can see it.
Well, yes, I will, yeah. Sorry about that.
Mr. Leckie, when you're ready, we don't know what you have to,
File number 194248. Roll number 1402176. 0000. 1626 Magnus Avenue. We have a 1959 two-story, 22-suite building. Page 2, we have a sale of $1,475,000. I looked at it, it looks like it's arm's length. We have 5 bachelors, 8 one-bedrooms, 9 two-bedrooms, for a total of 22 units. These are all model parameters. The average rent of $483, average income, I should say. This building again has been reduced to poor quality. It's our lowest quality, and that's why the rent is low and the expenses are high. The income and expense statements that were supplied, basically of no use. The income is shown as $76,000, although I have 2014 statement when I looked at different years of $135,000.
Where is that, Mr.?
It's not in evidence, but I'm just saying that the loss, well, that includes mortgage interest. Something's going on with this building. We have to inspect it. And now when I look at Mr. Story's, we'll get to that. But anyway, it's assessed at roughly half what it sold for May 2017. So I would ask that you maintain the assessment. Regardless, I suspect we're going to be reviewing this one and inspecting it and doing a supplemental assessment.
Mr. Story, any questions?
Yes, you mentioned that it appeared to be an arm's length sale. What did you do to determine, or to come to that conclusion?
Well, it was Hansel to Pristansky.
It was which?
The vendor was Hansel,
Yeah.
and the purchaser was Pristansky. And our reviewer said it was arm's length.
Okay.
But different vendors, purchasers. I don't know what the reviewer did to deem it arm's length.
Okay. And are you aware, has there been any renovation done or restoration on this property, or is there any pending that you know of?
There was no permits.
And this is located on Magnus Avenue?
Right, right across the street from the school.
Yeah. What's that,
That's
big
Cicero?
store? That's Cicero?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's right at the end of, I'm just guessing.
Okay. And you indicated that it's at the highest end of the range for expenses, income, and cap rate, did you?
Right. It's at the lowest quality range
The lowest quality range.
that we have.
And the expense ratio is extraordinary, 62%?
Right,
But that's all model.
yes.
And you're using a 6% cap rate, but you're saying it's the worst of that particular classification of the apartment block.
Well, if you
So
lower
that's
the,
is 6 the highest percent used in Winnipeg?
no, but this would be how much? Well, I think it's in the north end zone, which is higher cap rates.
Higher than 6.
No, this is, 6 would be higher than, if it was in a different area, it could be 5 1/4.
It's 59 years old
Right,
on Magnus. And we have a 5 1/4 cap
Is
rate?
there a question here, or are you debating this?
No, I'm just thinking. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Murphy.
I think it, because it's at 6 because of the location.
Yeah. and
Otherwise it would be
condition.
lower.
Mr. McPherson?
Just a clarification, average is 483.87 monthly, average monthly. And there's 5 bachelors, 8 one-bedrooms, 9 two-bedrooms.
Right.
I thought your statement for the last property was the 550 that was applied was the lowest possible value?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we got the low on this, to tell you the truth. What I said was 550 was a number that we used largely for bachelor units and seniors, that type of thing. We have a lot of Manitoba housing bachelor units. We compared those to other senior market rent.
Okay, so this 483.87 is not necessarily a model driven?
I don't know if this is model or if this was adjusted. I have no way of telling that.
Okay, and you said poor condition has been applied.
Right.
Does that affect the cap rate too, or is that just a
No,
rental?
it doesn't. And the theory there is that if you lower the rent, increase in expenses, you've taken away the risk.
Right.
So your cap rates go through.
Okay.
We've applied higher cap rates for 2 zones. Zone
Yep. And this, the
4 and
sale,
7.
you said it was just a reviewer that said it was, or it's
Well,
like you
I-
didn't receive a mailer as far as you know?
We didn't get a mailer. I looked at it and it's a different vendor and purchaser.
Some questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Monsieur Tellier?
Yes, you did mention that there may be or will be a supplemental on this one.
Well,
You made that reference.
I'm going to put in that it should be inspected.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sid, on with your
This is
presentation.
a follow-up. Why would it be a supplementary?
Well, if it's been renovated, that type of thing. Seems unusual that somebody would pay that much and we only have it assessed at this much.
On with the presentation, Sid.
Thank you. I apologize, as I indicated, this is a new property for us, and we had trouble, the owner, who many of you must know, was tied up with some business and had trouble getting us the information on a timely basis, so we submitted. Our position is very straightforward. What we're suggesting is a cap rate, because of location, it's Magnus, because of age.
Was this part of the evidence that you're presenting?
No,
What
it's
is
just
it?
a workup, it just shows I'm asking 7% rather than,
You want to show it to Mr.
yeah, it's just a,
Lucky first?
this is calculation errors.
Hmm?
We're gonna get a workup now. I was trying to see what the appellant was asking for.
That's what, I was just finding out why it
She's
wasn't
got
in
it.
the pack.
Okay.
Mr. Lucky, okay if he presents it?
Sure.
Okay, lay it out.
Yes, if we go to.
So it's right on cap rate then?
It's all cap.
You agree with his numbers?
Yeah, yeah.
You're
agree with everything.
looking for 1% higher than the city.
And I did drive by the building, and I couldn't see anything that appeared to be any renovation or updates. It looks original to me. And that's it in the picture, that's page 1. Everything else pretty straightforward. We did some of the rent roll, it'll give you the actual rents, Mr. Person. But there is some reference to Reno in here as well. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, pretty much every suite, we should probably white out
The name?
tenants, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Gang, just run through it.
On your copy, can you take out the
Mine's there.
tenants? Page 3.
My tenants
Right, so it looks like every suite has had rentals.
had some rentals by the look of it, yeah. So, going to the, we accept the rent potential, we accept the vacancy, the expense allowance, albeit high at 62%, the agreement, and we're suggesting that the cap rate of 6% is low based on condition, location, configuration, no balconies. Parking is limited, but I think there's some, as I recall. So I would ask a 7% cap rate. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Lucky?
No.
Mr. Terrier?
Yeah, well, first of all, on page 3, there's a bunch of stuff that's post-reference there. So I'm making that comment, and on the left, there's all these different rentals and so on. Where is the evidence provided that the cap rate should be higher? I'm looking at the evidence that you've submitted, and I don't see anything that addresses the issue of the condition of the building.
Well,
So
we don't, on the
that's
cap,
what I'm looking at.
yeah, the
That's
cap
all.
rate, we didn't tie it directly to the condition of the building, of course. We just said that if the cap rate for this type of property, multifamily housing citywide, because it is kind of citywide, the cap rate is done, is that we think it's lower than any of these third-party reports. Certainly, Colliers would not be doing a report and including it. I wouldn't imagine they would include this property in their statistics as to the ranges, and I think this is outside the range. This is a rate that's been used by this board on the Manitoba housing type properties. And so that's why I used the 7%.
Okay,
And I
thank you,
don't
Mr.
have
Chairman.
evidence.
Mr. McPherson?
No questions, thank you.
They said, problem I'm having is the sale, to be quite honest,
I am too,
at $1,475,000.
yeah.
What was the cap rate on that? That was
I-
2017?
I don't know.
we've got the sale amount.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that it would be an arm's length sale.
There's gotta be more tied to the sale than this building.
Yes, yeah, well, it's double the assessment. But we don't have the details of the sale. The assessor didn't.
I gave you that they're different vendors and purchasers.
Yep, we've got that.
You mentioned Hansel and Kristansky, but
Yeah,
that doesn't.
we
say
don't know
their
the relationship
relationship.
between the two names, we don't know how it was done.
As a matter of fact, I just thought of something, maybe I do have some information on this now. There's a possibility that sale wasn't arm's length. The owner of the building and his wife are in the middle of a very nasty asset split. But I don't have much evidence other than I know that's part of the reason he wasn't available to get information to us.
Okay,
So I don't know.
leave it with us, thank you very much.
Sorry.
On to the next one.
Who's that?
Higgins.
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 Oops.
I've driven by this.
I built it.
I actually
Not
put it,
really.
I put it on the roll. I was in it to the first building.
Yeah.
So I did inspect this one.
Kid's building, it's gotta be worth it.
No, I was involved, I had the pleasure of being involved in arranging some.
When you're ready, Mr. Stuckey, let's move on.
File number 193962, roll 130-960-93400. We have 155 Higgins Avenue. This is it's two buildings. There's the apartment building, which was built in 2008, and then there's townhouses next to it, which were built in 2012. I was in the apartment section, put it on, and okay, yeah, sorry, I was just thinking I started in 09, but we put it in 09. So we have, it says a combination of the two-story townhouses, four-story apartment. There's 43 suites altogether. And, excuse me. 4 one-bedroom, 24 two-bedroom, and 15 three-bedrooms. This is all model parameters, and we have a net operating 229, 540, and a 5% cap rate. That's all I have to say about that building. We have some rental comparables, comparable areas.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Questions, Mr. Story?
Yes, this is a subsidized building.
Well, I call it nonprofit. It's housing for education, people in schooling.
And they-
Well, when I looked at it, it was housing for people in schooling next door at the old CP station and other training facilities.
And there are no leases.
Well, I was told the way that they run it is that people can stay there while they're in school. If they move on from the schooling, then they have to move on from the building. It's student housing, that's what it is.
But are you aware that to qualify to live there, you have to have no income, be on welfare, and attending classes?
I heard the attending classes part. So
So how does the, I've done a little bit of research on rental housing and how some of those properties are assessed.
Right.
How does the assessment department treat a property like this, where the income is not from the,
Well, the income isn't market,
Occupancy.
so, the mandate of the Assessment Act is market income. So it's very common, if people are on assistance or they could be working poor, they only pay 1% of their income towards rent.
yeah, but how
And then
does
there-
that affect the value? How do you value the building? How do you take that into consideration?
Well, I told you, we use market rent. And I have market rent in these comparables on page 4.
And the theory is that we do this because we're trying to determine what somebody would transact. What would somebody pay for this building? That's what we're here for, correct?
Right.
Okay. And it's on the CP main line, so it's built right, butted up to the rail line. You aware of that?
It's close to transportation.
Good one.
Yeah. Bus routes.
Hey, you win, I like that. Yeah, it's on the main line, it's on the CP main line.
Right.
And it's on contaminated land. You aware of that?
Well, we haven't seen any contamination studies. I don't know that if it was contaminated, they'd allow them to build it there.
There's no basement?
Right.
Yeah, it's 2,500 feet coming. And you haven't toured the site?
Pardon me?
You can't speak to condition?
I was in the original building when it was built. I drive by there several times a week.
And there's a sale for $1 in your brief, it's in 207. You know anything about that?
No. Probably some sort of land sale transfer.
Yes, it was. It was City Winnipeg gave them the land that cold storage used to be on.
Okay.
This is fine, if you go to your brief, the questionnaire, I don't think there's numbers on it, but it's the one with all the expenses and whatnot.
Right, their return.
Yeah, and you can see the vacancy's 29%.
Right.
And you're aware that, you may or may not be aware that there's a subsidy, which is at line 215, $114,000 a year for operations.
I'm not sure
Which line are you showing that on?
215.
on what page.
Oh, it's on that page with the
Same
annual
page?
expenses, yeah. It's in the middle column, middle of the 3 columns.
Okay, gotcha.
See it?
Right.
It says loans, hard to read, bank fees, bed and contingency. The contingency is the money when they're, whatever they're short from
Right,
operating.
I
They
understand.
get that from provincial housing.
Okay.
Okay, those are all my questions, thanks.
Any, well, that's your presentation, that's your question. That's your presentation, isn't it? You're working on your presentation?
No, I
There's
was
just
just
questions.
Oh, I thought he was already done on that. Do you have any questions?
Just the, 10% vacancy. Is that a model?
No, I think somebody would have probably added that.
Okay.
Part of the difficulty is it's run on a program, so you have obsolescence of kicking your tenants out. You know, if you, well, whatever.
Okay, and your 5%, that's based on primarily the age, I guess, and
Right.
size. The area didn't come to consideration on this particular one? There's no premium for that area? I'm just saying,
No.
5% is the lowest I've seen.
Right, that wouldn't have location premium,
Okay,
whether
thank you.
there may or may not should be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Modis?
Well, thank you.
Good, on with your presentation, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, if I can just, same thing, the workup, just asking for a different cap rate. That's,
You're okay with the workups again?
it's the same thing.
The same
Your
NOI, just
workup
different
with the
cap.
7 cap,
7? Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, I don't know if the board wants this, but this is just a subsidy, it's just from this page I just showed you.
I haven't got it.
It shows you subsidy.
Thank you.
I'll talk to them. So what this is, I just want to speak to it quickly. The City of Winnipeg gave the former cold storage lands to the Ag Center to encourage them to build a facility for student housing. These are kids that come off reserves, come into the city. And the land that was available that they could get for free was on Higgins. So it's on Higgins. And it's in a very undesirable location. And I can tell you that in the last 2 months, there's been 3 murders within a block of this particular facility. Maybe there's another one, 4th one on right over there off the subway the other day. It's a very, very difficult area to be in. The students, there's a 29% vacancy because the students, there's no classes in the summer. So it's unique as opposed to a Manitoba housing facility that doesn't have vacancy because there's no turnover. There's turnover here because they have to be taking classes to stay there. They try to get band money from the reserve they come from to try to get them carried to stay there through the off season, through the summer when there's no classes at the school. So that's what gives rise to that vacancy. So it's always going to be there. It's just the nature of the operation. What happens is to qualify, you have to be a student at the Ab Center of Winnipeg taking classes. You have to have no income, be on Manitoba welfare, and have no assets. And be a student at the school. So the question is, how do you handle something like this? It's next door, it's got the rail line behind it, it's got one of their training centers, their machine shop to the west of it, to the east of it. You have a nice building that's been refurbished, 125, which is Dirksen Plumbing and Heating. But it's a totally funded, subsidized property. And one doesn't know, number one, who would buy it, why would they buy it, what would they require? You certainly, again, I think there'd be a challenge converting this to an apartment building. I don't know where you'd park. There's parking issues. So how do you, like, I don't know how this is done. Again, I did nose around and look at some decisions and try to find out how these Manitoba housing, subsidized housing, this is purely subsidized. Where they operate, whatever they're short, the province subsidizes. So I'm suggesting a 7% cap rate. This is not a typical apartment block that would fall under any of your parameters, in my opinion. It experiences, we had a problem with housing people because their repairs and maintenance were extraordinary. Well, these are young Aboriginal kids, and by their nature, they tend to be young kids. And they cause damage, they live hard. So it has extraordinary operating costs. There's no relationship to the market as to what rents you pay to get the welfare, the percentage of the welfare money. So I would ask the board to consider a 7% cap rate. They also have a TIF. You'll see on the workup, and the TIF for this year is $11,105. And a TIF, I think you're all familiar with what that is. The city comes along and says, if you spend money and you increase the tax base because of it, and we'll give you some of that back. They have a small tip. They had the land donated by then Mayor Cates, cold storage plant. And that's it. The organization itself doesn't have a lot of money. They provide wonderful services for Aboriginal people in the city. They also inherited the CP station many years ago for $1, and 19 some years ago, and brought 19 social service agencies to the area where they thought they were in most need, which is Higgins and Maine. So what would the vacancy be for an apartment block on Higgins and Maine? I don't know. What would the security cost be? I don't know. What would the repair and maintenance cost? I don't know. Because there isn't anything like that. It's unlikely this would ever sell. It would be used as we think of apartment blocks. So I'm asking the board to think about a 7% tax rate. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Lucky?
No.
Mr. McPherson?
No.
Monsieur Therrien?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Let's move on to the next one. 1607 Henderson Highway. Again, we can stick just to cap rate on this one, that's it.
This is also subsidized housing. May I have 1 minute break?
Sure. Yeah, now break one. 1607 Henderson Highway next. Again, it's a cap rate issue.
Roll number, or I should say file number 19-4667, roll number 0400-103-7100. Property address is 1607 Henderson Highway. This is as, well, we'll get to that, but it's a nonprofit building. There's 9 stories. I actually, I think most people are familiar. I just snapped a picture of it from our system there. It's right at the corner of Douglas and Anderson.
It's Peggot's, right? It's Peggot's?
Just past,
Yeah.
or it's near Piglet's, but
Yeah.
that's a building that most people are familiar with. So it's a masonry high-rise building with large balconies, and it was built in 1991. There's 68 suites. We have them all as 1 bedroom. And as I said, it's a non-profit. So these are model income and expenses. Page 4, this is, I'll mention again, these are, I've clipped out of the, it's the Society of Seniors Housing Directory. And this is a 2016 rents. So it shows that 1607 Henderson is 30% of your income. So if you're making $1,000 a month on pension, your rent's $300. So that's why we have to establish market rent. I mean, the same thing you said, if you're making $3,000 a month, your rent would be $1,000 a month. So typically then you would move on to something else. So I've compared them to other apartments. A lot of the, I call them Bergen buildings in that area. So we feel that our average or our overall income of $774 is there. And the quality has been reduced, that's why it's a higher expense ratio of 50.7. So we do agree on the, I believe we agree on the NOI, but I wanted to emphasize that, you know, we have taken the risk of, we have market rent, we have market expense, and I would ask that you maintain our assessment of $6,069,000, which is $89,000 a unit, and that's very conservative for a high-rise masonry building. Don't think I have anything else. No, that's it.
Sid, questions?
I know I'm fine, thanks.
You're good?
Yeah.
Mr. McPherson? Monsieur Terrien?
Thank you.
Sid, on to you. with the
Okay, I'll just
6%
pass that,
why-
I'll just say, explain, yes? Yeah, same thing, Rob, just passing it, it shows what they're saying, but it gives you, it's for the board's information. So what it is, it's subsidized, it's for seniors with limited means, they can't have any savings. They pay a percentage of, as Rob has indicated, they pay a percentage of their pension incomes for the rent. If you look at the top, the potential rent the city's using is $775, but the actual rent received is only $437. So the market rent is $775, and the actual rent received is $437. The annual subsidy, this is called the Kildonan Foundation. It's a not-for-profit. All these money goes back into the coffers of the building until it's paid off, and then it'll be another nonprofit and something else will happen. The money has to be reinvested back into the same project. Low-income seniors, it's based on, it's less than 30%, but it's close. And there is a limit, it can't be thousands of dollars because the people can't have any savings and they have to be on pensions, and I think their income has to be under $24,000 to qualify for it. They're all one bedroom, limited parking, and the annual subsidy. So this is a subsidized property. The CMHC requires or demands that we appeal it, or that it be appealed each year. Although they subsidize it, they still want it appealed. So we appeal it every year. And we're asking that the cap rate be 6%. Again, it's not for profit. It has access and egress challenges. It would have parking problems. It doesn't have a lot of common areas, but when they built it, somebody built it with a bit of a potential retail at the front, in the front entrance, and their windows. And you'll see people, they use that for their play cards and to socialize. There's no food service in this, I don't believe. And when there is events, the women from the church provide some of the, some labor, some free labor, and other volunteer labor. So I'm just asking that the cap rate be reflective of the fact that it's geared to a particular market. It's, we don't know, maybe the assessor is correct in that if you stop being a senior subsidized, then you could be an apartment, you probably could here. You might find a reduction in the rent that you could collect from the $775, certainly not from the $437, because it wouldn't have typical amenities. But it's a nice building, and it's serving a need in that end of the city, and they have one on Edison, and they have this, there's two of them. Edison is Mrs. Bergen, as I mentioned. So I would respectfully submit that the 6% be considered by the board for cap rate. Thank you.
Mr. Lucky, questions?
No.
Monsieur Terrien?
No, thank you.
Mr. McPherson?
Thank you, Darrell.
No? Let's move on to the next property then. Final property will be 403 St. Anne's Road. Again, this property will be dealing just with cap rate again. Like Mr. Story's agreeing with
Yes, it's pure cap rate.
you. Okay, on with your presentation, Mr. Lucky.
File number 19-3919. Roll number is 0800365. 7000, 403 St. Anne's Road. Is a 1956 two-story building. It was given an effective age of 1966. That wouldn't affect the cap rate or anything. Number of suites is 14. Three bachelors, 5 one-bed and 6 two-bed. It's a good suite mix. And our model generated assessment is slightly lower than the actual. I would ask that you maintain our assessment of $1,268,000.
Mr. Story, you got any questions?
Have you had an opportunity to drive by or inspect the property?
No, I have not seen this bill.
I too drove by this one, and I'm not a contractor, but it doesn't appear to have a lot of work. However, the windows look very nice, and it's, could have had some, but I didn't see any record of any major renovations.
Is that a question, Sid?
No, I was
Then
musing.
save it for your presentation.
No, I have no questions. Thanks.
Good, Mr. McPherson?
Model generator?
Right, yeah, the actual Lincoln's a lot higher than our model.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Monsieur Carrier?
The cap rate at 510, do we know what it was on the previous cycle? No, we don't.
No, I don't.
Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
The cap rate 5.10, using the city's cap rate study, not the study, but your cap rates, you're showing your cap rates on these ones on a B anywhere from a high of 7.3 to a low of 4.
Right.
That wouldn't be on that age of building though, the 4s.
Yes. I'll hold it, what year is this? No. But, this assessment, cap rates used to be 5, 5 and a quarter,
Yeah,
you know.
5.5.
Now what they did was, it phases them, rather than having these jumping off points. The age and building size phased in, so you're gonna see 5, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, rather than going from 5 to 5.5. They're more gradual. That's why you're seeing these precise cap rates.
But you've got 3 Ward at 5,
Right.
new building.
Right,
This is
and
5.10.
like I said, size and age are both factors. And as you can see, these little buildings sell for a really low cap rate because mom and dad can buy them. People can pool together their savings and buy them. Whereas, the big buildings for newer 10, 20, 30 million, you're looking at very sophisticated developers, owners, funds, and we found that, yes, these small buildings are selling for very low cap rates. I've seen 3, and we've seen owners on their return say, I paid 4.5 cap.
We won't get into why they do that, but I'm done with the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. On with the presentation, Mr. Story.
Yes, we're in 403 St. Anne's, right?
Mm-hmm. That's where we are.
Sorry. Yes, sir, we go to page 3 of our brief. First of all, the pictures on the front, you can see they're a little bit an older fashioned building. It's 53 years old, 53, 44, no, 63 years old. Go to page 3 of the brief. We're suggesting that the cap rate of 5.10 that the assessor is using does not necessarily reflect the age and condition. The location of this property is spectacular. I was quite surprised. I drove by it. And all along St. Anne's are apartment buildings, like an apartment row. They're well maintained, and landscaped, it's very, very attractive. In the location, it's on a major thoroughfare, they're good, but they're older. These older buildings don't have balconies, et cetera, and typical amenities that you might get now. So I'm asking the cap rate be 6% and an assessment be $1,077,962. We reviewed it at 6.3, and that would be $1,026,026, and at 6.5, that'd be $995. We're asking 6%. I think it's very appropriate in the circumstances. I don't think anything's been done on the building, certainly not in the last number of years, maybe many years ago. But it appears to be well maintained, and I respectfully submit cap rate to be considered to be 6%. I also have rebuttal evidence on some decisions. Shall I pass them out now?
Good time to do it. Rebuttal evidence on some decisions?
Well, it's rebuttal evidence to some decisions that have been made on these properties. Hang on.
Which properties are you talking about?
We have Raymond is in there from last year.
Pass it over and see what he's about. Pass it to.
These decisions. And 3 from this year.
Yeah.
If it's not beneficial to the board, we don't need it. I can do the summation.
It's just we don't put a lot of weight on past, we don't know what evidence was presented.
Well, I presented 3 of
Well,
them.
I mean, yeah, I
There's
could,
only 5 there, and I did 3 of them last year.
yeah, I could bring in decisions at 5 or whatever.
You want us to see this, or you
I don't care.
don't care? Pass them up.
You don't pass them on?
Yeah, we'll pass them up. You don't have to get up.
Is there
Has he got
any
copies?
more copies?
Oh. What did I do for you? Just send them. Yes, I got them. Hang on.
You can give your copy.
No, I'm gonna give it.
Give it to him now so you can look
We
at
have
it.
asked to have one.
I didn't do-
If we don't have copies.
No, you didn't?
Well, we may not. I can just speak to it. I don't.
Yeah, just speak.
I just had them.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh, here they are. They have appeared. And I'll just talk to, there's only one here, for interest only, one Raymond, which is number 10, and 190 Raymond, I'm sorry. Just wanted you to see it. As a matter of fact, this was a question of the assessor, if you knew it
You
last
mean
year.
page 10?
Yeah. Page 10. I just rebuttal brief, it should be Raymond Place, and the cap rate's 5.5% from last year. Okay, got it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think you had raised that before.
Pardon me?
I think you had raised that before.
You had asked Mr. Lucky if he knew,
Oh,
and I think I indicated, that's when I raised it, you had asked the question.
oh, I see, okay.
And there's another one on Henderson Highway, 1607, which is on page 8. And then the rest are multi-tenant properties in this cycle, and they're 5 1/4. I think that's it.
Good. Any questions, Mr. Lecter?
There's no cap rate that I can see on the one on Henderson.
No, they don't have the cap rate, just see.
So the decision is based on recommendation presented by the assessment department.
Yeah,
So he reduced it 100,000.
100,000 roughly.
I would do that too, for a settlement.
There you go.
I'm inclined to accept.
He's inclined to accept it. But you're not gonna make
We're on a
it.
settlement.
Huh?
We're going through this exercise because
Okay,
CMHC
thanks.
would like it appear.
Okay.
Yeah. We're done. Oh, unless you guys got
One
questions.
word summation.
You want a summation now?
Two.
I was letting you off.
Okay, I'm gonna go right in. I just, in enjoying the company and the decisions today, it dawned on me as I was going through this, the Lady Joyce at 2390 McPhillips is, because it's new construction, but I think that the 6% is too aggressive, and I would ask the board, if you decide to change the cap rate, to change it to 5.5 rather than 6.
That was the
It's
one.
new construction. it
That was the
has-
one on which one?
2390 McPhillips.
Phillips, yeah, okay.
And that's the one that the cap rate, I was concerned about how it would be perceived to be on where it's located, with car dealerships around it and then the shopping center.
Beautiful location.
Maybe a plus, I don't
Just a
know.
beautiful
To
location.
some it is, some isn't.
Seniors love it, they go shopping.
They're not, it's not seniors, it's kids.
It was mostly seniors when we inspected it.
Go Jays is seniors?
Yeah.
A lot of seniors and
Really?
past clients. Shut her down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.